I came from the mud. There's dirt on my hands.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Starter Story podcast, where today could be the start to your story. Today's guest is an Arizona State record holder. That's the first time we had someone like this on the show. It's pretty exciting. So, a total of 1,609 pounds, back squat of 622.8 pounds, bench press of 358.2 pounds, deadlift of 628.3 pounds. Motherfucker you don't want to mess with. Let's just go ahead and just leave it there. He's 2 years free of amphetamine use, works for Peak Nutrition. I would love to talk a little bit more about that. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Tristan Johnson. What's going on, brother? How are you?
I'm excellent, man. I really appreciate you having me on here.
Absolutely. I'm excited. I'm excited to I've met you. I've seen you a couple of times at Peak, and I followed you. I follow you on Instagram, so I've seen a lot of what you've been doing, and I'm just excited to just to talk to you, man. It's gonna be exciting. I'm sure you're gonna have a lot of stuff to offer to everyone, and it's gonna be a great episode for people to listen to. So I'm really excited for today, actually.
Yeah, for sure, man. I love sharing my story. So whatever you want to know, I'm an open book.
Cool. I love that. That's awesome. So, talk to us about your story, tell us, from the beginning, everything that you've gone through up until where you're at right now.
Man, from the beginning. Okay. I'll try to make this as concise as possible, but growing up, I was an athlete, and I wrestled my entire life. Mm-hmm. And really that sport pushed me, it challenged me, and it had a lot to do with the kind of person I am today.
Yeah.
And I was very successful in that sport. I was a very successful student, a very successful athlete. I never quite achieved what I wanted to. But I was always like the hardest worker in the room, was always showing up to every practice, going to every tournament, competing every weekend. And come the off-season time, even though there was real no off-season, I was always kind of like the fun haver. I was the person who would work hard, play hard, but then work harder. So I was kind of like the person that everyone looked to as like this role model in the community. I was always in the news and making the paper and the headlines, but I was also like the person that my friends' parents wanted their kids to be around, but little did they know I was like the kind of like the negative influence on the weekends. And the thing was, I always had like the balance. I knew when it was time to like, dial it in, and I didn't like to be a negative influence on my friends or anything. And I went on to wrestle in college, actually, for the University of Iowa. And I had 3 consecutive knee surgeries that year, which was really discouraging mentally. It was just really tough to continue rehabbing and stay motivated.
Yeah.
And I didn't plan on going to college at the time until I got recruited by the University of Iowa, and they won a national title this year. They were top 3, top 5 when I was a senior in high school. So it was really hard to resist that offer. And so when I decided to sign with them, I just picked a random major and I started studying medicine, pre-med. I was like, I'm going to go to school to be a doctor. And so when I was done wrestling, I was like, maybe this isn't really the thing for me. Do I really want to be here? And being in the situation that I was in, I was really like over my head in studies. And that's kind of where my addiction began to stem from. I was taking a lot of credit hours, and I was overworking myself with these classes. And I started abusing Adderall, just like, to get ahead in school. And what started out as something to help me be more effective and to be a more productive individual very quickly turned into the complete opposite, man. Like, I was coaching at the time for a very successful wrestling club, and I ended up like quitting that job, and I was becoming the kind of person who would stay up for, weeks on end. I would take upwards of 60 Adderall a day, enough to kill a room full of grown men. And I couldn't really control when I was going to, come down from that and pass out.
Yeah.
And so what I was faced with a lot of times was, do I let myself fall asleep and then have to worry about never waking up again? Or do I take another Adderall to keep me up and keep me going? But I was walking this fine line. I always thought if I fell asleep, I was never going to wake up again. But then I'd hold the pill in my hand and I would think, okay, this is going to be the one that kills me. And I would still take the pill. And I would do that for, another week straight. I would contemplate life or death. and I would take another pill, 20, 30 times a day. And it just got to the point where I would pass out and I would be out for 3 to 4 days, and I would miss very important things. I would miss tournaments I had to be coaching at. I'd be missing practices, and I had a lot of young kids who looked up to me. And I'd miss final exams, which would, have a heavy weight on my grade. And so like I would fail entire semesters, even though like I was doing well in the classes. And then it got to the point where I was missing job interviews, and I was just not showing up for the people who cared about me. And very quickly I became isolated because, I couldn't hold my word for anything. And that was a pretty tough spot to be in, but being the kind of person I am, I don't always show a lot of the stuff I'm going through at the time anyway. And nobody from my understanding knew was dealing with this addiction. My parents had a little bit of an idea. They would check on me sometimes, or they'd send the neighbors over to check on me, and they would find me like passed out on the floor, or they would hear about me missing a job interview. And so my parents, knowing the kind of person I was growing up, they just knew it wasn't me. But, they loved me so much, they would always listen to what I had to say when I would lie and manipulate myself out of the situation, because they wanted to believe the good in me. They wanted to hear like, oh no, like this happened. And, my mom didn't want to believe I was a liar and an addict and a thief. And so she would believe those stories I was making up. And yeah, man, it was rough. I hated my life for 2 to 3 years, and I, spent tons of money on pills and made no progress in life. And I was living this life where I was, pretty successful, but also at the same time, I was doing that to mask everything that I was doing that wasn't good as an individual. So yeah, it was very emotionally and mentally exhausting. And I really, really, really was ready for that addiction to take my life. And I just I didn't want anyone to know about it. I knew I needed help, but I couldn't own up to, telling the people I worked with or the people I cared about that I needed to go get help, because I didn't want to hurt their feelings. I didn't want them to think bad upon me when really I needed help more than anything in the world. So
yeah. So what got you into making the decision that you needed to get help and you needed to stop?
Man, so around January, beginning of January, I was staying in this house I wasn't supposed to be in. The bills weren't being paid. And this is in Iowa, so it's really cold in January. It's 10 degrees outside. Yeah. There's no heat in this house. I think I had like a stroke or something. My health was very bad. I would get high blood pressure spells and rush myself to the hospital a lot. Went into cardiac arrest a couple times. Just really scary situations where I would dial 911 on myself and think this was going to be the end of it. I'd lose function in my hands and my feet, my legs, and really crazy stuff was happening to me. And it was January. I don't know what the day was, but very late January. My mom came to visit me because no one could get a hold of me. The neighbor was sick of coming and kicking the door in or cracking the window open to come check on me to make sure I was alive. Or maybe she was out of town that weekend. I don't know what the case was, but my mom showed up, and she was aging a lot more than she should have been because of the stress I was putting her through. I was young. I was, I think, 19 at the time. And I always had this kind of idea, if this addiction didn't take my life, there was a slight chance I could heal from it and, become a normal person again. I always had that idea in the back of my head. So I had a tiny little glimpse of hope hanging on there by a thread. But every time I saw my mom, when she would come check in on me or, make sure I was still alive, man, she looked like she would age 5, 10, years every time I'd see her, and only a couple months would pass. Mm-hmm. And deep down, I knew I was doing more damage to her and her central nervous system than I was on my own, because she would lose sleep at night. I would wake up with 50 to 100 missed calls, and, people texts from everyone that my mom knew that I knew checking up on me, because my mom would contact all these people who supposedly knew me to see if I was doing okay. And she always told me I was gonna be the reason she died from a heart attack or a stroke. She had high blood pressure herself. She doesn't eat very healthy. She smokes cigarettes all the time. She doesn't exercise. And she came to visit me one time, and the look in her eyes when she saw me just broke my heart, man. she broke down crying. I was sick. I was probably 140 pounds, skin and bone, eyes sunken into my head. I hadn't sleeping in probably close to 3 weeks. I was strung out. The whole right side of my body wasn't working. So like I literally could hardly walk. I was hobbling around with a broken ankle because I had rolled my foot so many times because there was no function in the right side of my body. Mm-hmm. So my mom was like, what's wrong with you? Why haven't you gone to the doctor? Like she was freaking out, and she just started hysterically crying and breaking down, you know, just like asking God in front of me what happened to her son and like where did she go wrong as a parent and what mistakes she made, you know, growing up, and like why I never told her about any of this stuff. And I was right there seeing everything. Like she couldn't even talk to me because at that point I realized, you know, like her son that she knew and loved was already dead to her. You know, like I wasn't there. I hadn't been for a couple of years. And we got into a bit of an argument. I was getting really defensive, and, you know, I still wasn't owning up to the fact that I was an addict. And she was like, why don't you just go get help? And it turned into this argument, verbal altercation. I started to lose my temper, punched a hole in the wall. I was bleeding everywhere, and she lost. She was hysterically crying. She was freaking out. She like was running around, and I thought we were both going to like hyperventilate or have a heart attack or something. It was really scary. And I started like losing consciousness, and I knew I needed to get some fresh air because I'd had high blood pressure spells before. I'd gone into cardiac arrest a couple times, and I could feel it happening, and I was really scared. And I knew my mom was very close to the same thing. So I knew I had to like, you know, get out and breathe and calm myself down and give her some space for herself too. And so I walked outside just to catch my breath, to keep, you know, from passing out. And when I came back inside, I wanted to apologize to my mom, you know, give her a great big hug. And I came in, I'm hobbling inside, mind you, I can hardly walk.
Yeah.
I can hardly breathe, just survived a little bit of a panic attack. And I walk inside and I'm yelling, Mom, where are you? I didn't see her. And I didn't get a response back. And so, you know, 5-10 minutes went on, I'm like yelling for my mom, and I still don't hear anything. And so my mind is racing. I haven't slept for weeks. I'm off a bunch of hallucinogenics, stimulants, amphetamines, you know, even downers, everything under the sun at this point. You know, I've been strung out for so long. I'm thinking my mom's laying dead somewhere, or, you know, immobile from a stroke or a heart attack, and she can hear me screaming, yelling for her, but she can't move. I really thought she had had a stroke. And so I start panicking and trying to hobble around to each room and try to find her. And I checked one of the bedrooms, the bathroom, another bedroom, the laundry room. She wasn't there. I hobbled all the way downstairs, hobbled upstairs, and I'm running out of breath. I can hardly move my leg. And I went up and checked up all the rooms upstairs, came back down. And at this point, I'm freaking out. I'm thinking like, I definitely just killed my mom. She's laying in here dead somewhere. And I'm hyperventilating like crazy. I'm fading in and out of consciousness. My hands were losing function. I dialed 911 on my phone with my nose because I couldn't use my hands. And I literally felt like we were both, I just kind of accepted the fact that we were both going to die in that house. And I walked downstairs, and her dog was barking at the front room, the front porch, the one room I hadn't checked it. I'm like, oh, of course she's in here. So I opened the door, scared shitless, expecting to see her laying on the ground, ready to dial 911. And I opened the door, and she wasn't there. I had checked every room in the house, and I lost it. I freaked out. I started crying. I was barely conscious, and I swung the front door open, dialed 911 on my phone, and face planted in the snow, wanting the ambulance to show up because I was going out of it, and I figured my mom was somewhere and I couldn't find her. And when I lay down in the snow, I rolled over and was facing up. And when I rolled over, I saw her in the driveway smoking a cigarette, just taking a load off. And so I ended the phone call. I got up, and she was like, Tristan, what's wrong? What's wrong? She's like, you know, still pretty hysterical, but I'm a mess. And I was trying to explain to her like what was happening, but I was hyperventilating so bad I couldn't even, you know, it was such a scary situation. I just gave her a hug and cried and collapsed in her arms, man. And I was like, I'll get some help. And eventually, like, I finally calmed down. We thought about going to the hospital because I was in a really rough shape. And I finally like calmed myself down. She helped me breathe through, you know, my anxiety and everything that I was going through and get my blood pressure down. And she helped me get into bed, and I fell asleep, and I was probably out for a couple of days. But when I woke up, my dad was there, my mom was there. They're at the foot of my bed, and they asked me if I wanted to get some help. And I said yes. And that day I went to a rehab facility with nothing but the clothes on my back. And I was there for 35 days, and that was it, man. Like, that was the day I quit caring about, just myself. That was the day I had to get rid of my ego and like, focus on the people around me who have done everything for me. Because like I had a great childhood and my parents did an awesome job raising me, and to see the look on my mom's face when I felt as if I was dead to her and she questioned all of her parenting skills and everything she had ever done for me was the most painful thing I've ever experienced. And then to think I killed her, man, that was rough. Like that was a slap in the face from God if I ever had one.
Yeah.
And went to rehab, passed out for 5 or 6 days and woke up, started hitting the gym twice a day there, got out of rehab and packed a bag full of clothes and drove down to Arizona with $100 to my name and started from scratch.
Jesus Christ, man.
Yeah.
Dude, first of all, I just want to say I extremely appreciate you being completely vulnerable, completely honest, because that's not easy. I mean, your story is by far like one of the most opening vulnerable. I'm kind of speechless a little bit, honestly. That was amazing. So I appreciate you seriously. First of all, just being so open and being able to share that, because like it's not easy. Obviously, it's not easy, but obviously being able to talk about it, makes it a little bit better, and it can help a lot of people too, that's incredibly important.
Yeah.
So I just want to say, first of all, I appreciate that. Let's transition here just a little bit. You talked a little bit about when you were in rehab, you started working out twice a day. So what kind of got you into the fitness industry and, particularly powerlifting now?
So when I was in rehab, I was working out twice a day, right? And part of the reason I came out to Arizona was because when I got out of rehab, late February, it was still freezing cold in Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not anything to do there besides, drink and hang out with your friends and go to the bar. So I knew, first of all, it wasn't going to be good for me. And I had destroyed every relationship I had. I knew I had to, go somewhere else, work on myself for a little bit before I could go back and make amends and own up to the mistakes I had made. And so that middle period where I was deciding what to do, I was still exercising twice a day, but it was snowing in Iowa. So I was out in the woods chopping down trees and like bench pressing logs and doing lunges, like stuff straight out of a Rocky movie.
Yeah,
and I remember
Rocky,
it was
man.
so cool. And my fingers, like I had this log that I would roll and I would throw it up and catch it on my shoulders and like put it over behind my back to do squats and like presses with. And I kept pinching my fingers on it in the freezing cold, and it was really pissing me off. And like it was discouraging, and I didn't want to keep doing it. Like it was a pain in the butt to get up in the morning, and I would like sigh before I would go work out. And that wasn't the thing. Like usually that was the one thing I looked forward to in the day, like going through that new life of sobriety.
Yeah.
I was like, this isn't it. Like I gotta go somewhere warm where I can be active. And so I drove out to Arizona, and all the gyms were closed. The pandemic was full swing. Me thinking my life was going to be right back to normal, it was far from it. Everything was shut down. I had no idea what COVID was when I went into rehab and came out and the world was on pause. And so I kept up the 2-a-days for 333 days in a row.
Jesus.
And I started to hit a plateau in my progress physically. And I just was like, very much like really maturing at this point emotionally and physically too. But I realized that wasn't healthy for me, not only physically because it was inhibiting my growth and my progression, but that's how I was coping with everything, was exercise. And I realized, I needed to like make a little bit of a shift and learn how to be at peace with my feelings and like just be an adult and a grown man and, be a little bit wiser and just, know how to handle those things better. And I met a friend who took me to this gym that I just loved, East Valley CrossFit. And I went in there and I wasn't making a lot of money at the time. I really liked the classes. I was training there for a couple of weeks, and I would stay afterwards and like clean up the gym because I couldn't pay anything to, train there. And August Schmidt, he's the owner. He'd be like, "What the hell are you doing, man?" He's like, "Go home. Like, we have a crew that comes in and does this." And I just loved it, man. I was doing 75 hard at the time, and I was working a 4-day split with him. And I started getting really strong really quick. And I just remember hearing him tell me, just so you know, like everything outside of your lifting is going to interfere with your strength and your progression. And so then I was doing 75 hard. I'd be going on these runs and doing these other workouts, and I could hear August's voice in my head chirping at me like, "This is going to mess with your lifting. This is going to mess with your lifting. This is going to mess with your lifting." And I was like, dang it, whatever. So I started doing like active recovery, like stretching and yoga. And I really stuck to this 4-day program for, a good couple of months. And man, my 1 rep maxes skyrocketed. Like it brought me so much joy. I broke through my plateau, gained 25 pounds of muscle, 25 pounds within like the first 2 months training there. And it was really good, lean muscle, not a lot of body fat or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to build trust in the program. And then I just completely switched to the 4-day split. And at first I was a little worried because I'd been training twice a day. It's like, okay, what if I don't stay sober? But making the transition to powerlifting, it's more than just like a sport, more than just like hitting PRs. That program that I've been working has taught me so much more about life than really anything has. And what it did for me as an individual was it completely took me away from being the instant gratification person who trains his butt off to get the dopamine rush, to feel good in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, you go into the gym, you train 4 days a week, you rest 3, you hit a set of squats, you work up to, a set of 5 at 75% of what you're capable of. And you go home when you have a whole lot more in the tank.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not me. Like I love to go give everything I have. And so to like pump the brakes and do that was really challenging at first, but it really transitioned me out of that instant gratification, I need it now type of mentality, which is everything that an addict lives by, and that's taught me patience. That's taught me perseverance. That's taught me trust, sacrifice the short term now for the long-term result.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really just like changed the way I approach everything in life. It's more about consistency and doing it for an extended period of time and making a slight amount of progress every day to, reach that goal 5 to 10 years from now, rather than like doing something to make you feel good in the moment now.
Yeah.
It's impacted how I treat people and how I handle situations and how I handle my emotions. And that's really why I do it. Like it just reminds me of like how important that stuff is.
That's awesome. A lot of people, I can ask that question to many other people, like why they got into lifting. You'll get a wide array of answers, but I really like that, man. That's a fantastic answer. Yeah. What are your goals with powerlifting?
I just want to be a world champion. That's the main one.
Just kind of want to be a world champion,
Yeah. That's the main one. So before I got into powerlifting, when I was doing the 2-a-days, I was training at an MMA gym with a wrestling background. Like that's where I feel the most alive, is like when I'm in a fight one-on-one with someone, like that's where like I really thrive, is like in that situation where most people are just like, what the heck do I do? Mm-hmm. And when like the second or third swing of COVID hit, my gym I was training at closed, and that's when I found the powerlifting gym. And so I originally set some goals in powerlifting. My plan was like, okay, once I hit 600 on a back squat, I'll go back to MMA. But I really started falling in love with it. And with my career as a wrestler, to most people, they would consider me very successful. But like I said, I was always the hardest worker, but I never achieved what I really wanted to, or what I thought I deserved. Because like I always felt like I was at a disadvantage. I was always smaller. I was always weaker. Some would call these excuses. Maybe it was, or maybe I just wasn't real confident at the time. But it was really hard for me to excel in that sport. I couldn't have picked a harder sport. Like I was naturally way better at football. I was naturally really good at baseball. I just chose the hardest one. I have no idea why. And so like I never really got what I wanted out of that sport, and I never really realized how good I was until I was done. Like wrestling for the University of Iowa was like every kid's dream, and I had it, and I took it for granted because like I was just like, man, this is a lot of work. Like these kids are all way better than me. They are all have all these accolades. And with powerlifting, I wanted to go back to MMA, but I've been doing this for a very short period of time, and I've turned a lot of heads, and I've had a lot of great coaches, and people tell me my potential, and I have the confidence with this. Like I really believe if I stick with this and train sustainably without injury for 10 to 20, maybe 30 years, I could go down as the greatest of all time.
I fucking love it.
So like that's like the overarching thing. Like I have the confidence with this. Like I really do believe that. I've only competed twice, and I am just now figuring out like how a program works and like progressive overload and how my body adapts to certain things. And so I'm still brand new to the sport. A lot of powerlifters will peak after 10 to 20 years into their career is really where like they hit that prime, as long as they don't suffer any major injuries.
Of course.
And so I want to win a world title, but I mean, the kind of person I am, I probably won't stop there.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you won't, man. You'll end up picking something else. You'll go after that. I love it, dude. That's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about peak nutrition. So, many people this podcast, obviously people listen through all over the place. You know, Peak is a supplement store, you know, local to Arizona right now. So talk to everyone a little bit about Peak and then what you do there and what you guys do for everyone.
So Peak Nutrition, you know, it looks like a regular supplement store, but you walk in and you're met with a smiling face, usually some people that are in pretty decent shape who are very personable. And that's where it starts. But really, all we do, man, is like we have good intent. We really fucking care about the people we work with.
Yep.
And, you know, we build trust with the people who walk in the door. So, you know, we can have an open line of communication and get to know them and their goals. And through that, we're able to, you know, ask questions to identify what they're struggling with or what roadblocks they're having. Basically, we find problems with the customer that are getting in the way of their goals, and then we provide solutions. So whether that's a nutrition plan, supplements, you know, a friend to go to the gym with, or a community to introduce you to keep you motivated. That's really all we do, man. We just get people results by, you know, having good intent, finding problems, and providing solutions.
I love that.
But we really take a lot of time to train and educate and, you know, be the best in the world at that too. So absolutely.
I could tell, like, when I even asked the question, the smile on your face right away, you can just tell how passionate and how excited you are about it. Seriously, because, you know, I go into Peak many times, and I can vouch the same thing. Every single time I walk in there, usually it's a smile and here's a water, and you don't get that in other places. And like, just like a genuine, like, how are you? How can we help you? It's not like a normal, you know, supplement place where you go into and they're pushing all and peddling all this crazy stuff at you. You need to take this, this, and that. You know, it's very individualized. Like, you know, what are your goals? And it's genuinely just trying to build that connection, like you said, and build that trust with them. Because once you build that trust, you know, you got a fan for life, honestly. So I love that.
Absolutely.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Real quick, I don't want to keep you forever, and usually we keep this a little bit short. So last question I got for you. What are your goals? And I know you talked about, you know, being a world, you know, your goals in powerlifting, long term. What's your goals in the next 5 years?
Professionally or like with powerlifting?
A little bit of both.
Just in general?
Yeah.
So the next 5 years, you know, I'd like to have 2, maybe 3 world titles to my name with powerlifting. Who knows if I'll stay there or transition elsewhere, but I'm a really big believer in having personal and professional goals. So like something to chase during my work day, something to chase, you know, in my free time, just, you know, have that balance there. But, you know, within the next 5 years, aside from the powerlifting, I would like to have 5 to 10 franchise locations open up for Peak Nutrition that I personally own and operate myself.
I love that.
And at that time, you know, have 5 to 10 very professional teams working and training underneath me to eventually grow on and open their own franchises themselves. You know, because, you know, 10 to 20, maybe 30 years from now, I want to personally own and open 60 stores is where I would like to go as of now. And so a lot of work right now is the time where like I got to put my head down and put in all the work, so that way I can reap the benefits when I'm older. But, you know, within that 5 years too, like I think that's about the time when I really would get to the point where I would feel comfortable financially supporting like a family and a real relationship. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, maybe that would fit into the timeline there too. But yeah, the 3 things I really focus on in life are my personal goals, my professional goals, and my relationships. So
that's awesome. I love that, man. I appreciate you so much for coming on here and sharing your story. You know, tell everyone where they can follow you at and they can see more about you on social media.
So the main place you'll find me active is Instagram. My Instagram handle is Barbell Barbarian with 2 N's at the end of it.
Awesome. So, all right, brother. I appreciate you coming on, and enjoy the rest of your night.
Absolutely. Thanks, Matt. I really appreciate you too.
I came from the mud. There's dirt on my hands. Strong like a tree. There's roots where I stand. Oh, I've been running from the law.